Morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish with you back in the house here on this Thursday, getting ready, of course, for the National Football League and the College Football Championship with no games on a Thursday in the NFL or college. Kind of rare here, but that's where we're at in the seasons for both college and pro. But don't worry, we got you covered here on the show. Matthew Waters will be with us from Legal Sports Report. And also Bill Bender checks in on the College Football National Championship and some potential changes maybe to the bowl system. We will talk about that outside of the new playoff that's coming in as well. Also coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll get a preview of the Dolphins and Bills. So stay tuned for that as well and a whole lot more. So this is our Thursday edition of NewsWire on SportsGrid. Thanks again for being with us. Just in case this is your first time streaming or first time watching the show, I get a lot of that. People messaging me. We are on every day, live, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, talking the business of sports betting, talking sports wagering, updating you on everything that's happening around the country and around the globe as well. So thanks for tuning in if this is your first time, because certainly I know there is a lot of that around. Okay, now with college football bowl season in the rearview mirror and only the national championship to play, very interesting comment we wanted to start off the show with, because you've been hearing a lot of it, not just here on SportsGrid, but also going on around the country. A lot of blowouts, a lot of kids not playing in these bowl games. You certainly understand it with this new NIL deal. I mean, these are not kids that are going to sit out bowl games that are playing for the professional ranks. I mean, these are kids that are just transferring schools and then can't play for their team. So this was a quote yesterday from bowl season executive director Nick Carparelli. Now, check this out. He said yesterday, he told Yahoo Sports, the problem is not bowl games or the bowl system. The problem is all the unregulated circumstances around it now, with the transfer portal and the NIL and early signing period all happening at the same time. That doesn't occur in any other sport. And that is what needs to be fixed. Now, he makes a really fair point, because if you think about it, outside of this year and a little bit of last year's bowl season, for the most part, even if 2 or 3 games were non-competitive, we had a very competitive college football bowl season. But this year, not a lot of that. Now, the system, I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon. Maybe there is some way to prevent this from happening until after the bowl season is over, or incentivize the kids for actually playing for their schools. I'm just, spitballing here, trying to come up with some idea. I'm not the College Football Bowl Committee. But needless to say, a lot of people are absolutely understanding that something will need to be changed in the future. Okay, now let's move on to the National Football League. We got the official word from John Harbaugh yesterday. Lamar Jackson not going to play on Saturday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers are favored by 4 points. It's theirs to win. Certainly a win does not get them into the playoffs, but it would go a long way if they did. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver of the Miami Dolphins, and his family completely safe yesterday. They had a fire at their home in Southwest Ranches, which is probably about 25 minutes from me going west. I'm all the way on the east. He's on the west. Niners going to the Pro Bowl. And what about this announcement yesterday? Pro Bowl out of nowhere. 9 49ers selected to the Pro Bowl. Not a huge surprise here. Among them, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Kyle Juszczyk, and, of course, Fred Warner. Those are some of the players going to the Pro Bowl. And also Zach Wilson has been ruled out for the New York Jets finale. So naturally more Trevor Siemian coming up for the Jets on Sunday. Okay, now that Alabama's been eliminated from the playoffs, this was probably the least surprising bit of news that we got late yesterday. They have 9 players that are entering the transfer portal. And also their offensive lineman, who's very good, J.C. Latham, could potentially be an early day pick, announces his plans to declare for the NFL draft. By the way, Alabama is losing their center, Seth McLaughlin. And if you remember watching the college football championship game, Seth McLaughlin didn't really get it straight with Milroe a lot of times in that game, but I digress. Clemson's running back, Will Shipley, he's declared for the NFL draft, all ACC running back, and certainly will have no shortage of suitors in the transfer portal as well. NFL draft, he'll get drafted. And ex-Ohio State receiver Julian Fleming, he's announcing that he is transferring to Penn State. He was the number 1 recruit in the 2020 class. Again, coming up Monday night. Right now, Michigan 4 points, maybe 4.5 point favorites, depending on where you look in the national championship game over Washington. Now, last night, really good news to see Bronny James playing so well. He had 10 points. USC beats Cal by a final of 82-74. Baylor's women's basketball team, they won their first game in their new $200 million arena. They're ranked 6th in the country. They beat TCU by 21 points, 71-50. Gary Payton II, he could miss several weeks with a hamstring strain, just came back, and it was a calf strain, now a hamstring strain for him. And Bull Zach LaVine is going to return in the next week, and boy, do they need him. It's been a tough season for the Chicago Bulls. Also, last night, the Heat went on the road against Los Angeles Lakers and defeated them outright, in case you missed that. All right, let's get to some other news on the pitch. We'll start off with some soccer. Borussia Dortmund and Manchester United, they've agreed on a Jadon Sancho loan deal, a very sought-after prospect in soccer. Started off in Dortmund, went to Man U, now goes back to where it all began. By the way, U.S. men's team goalkeeper Zach Steffen, he's sold from Manchester City to the MLS. He's going to play for the Colorado Rapids, so that's coming up. And also, how about this in terms of sports betting? Vermont, online sports betting, approximately 1 week away. So the state of Vermont is something we'll be reporting on a ton next week. The first day that you can bet, if you live in Vermont, live online is going to be January the 11th of 2024. So that's coming up next week. Now, naturally, the other big event that's going on this weekend out in Hawaii is the PGA Tour has its first big event. So you're getting a lot of the media and a lot of the discussion. And Rory McIlroy, of course, still over on the PGA Tour, who was very anti-live golf, if you may remember, over the past year, saying all the players shouldn't leave and they should stay at the PGA Tour. He had a press conference yesterday, actually said my bad, said that he was being too judgmental, was the quote, for the players who joined Live Golf. And now, naturally, we've seen all the changes where Live Golf and the PGA Tour trying to get merged, and it looked like a separate entity. Doesn't look like it anymore. It looks like they'll both be together. Indeed, so that is part of the conversation there. And, of course, a lot of golf coming up this year. We'll be covering it for you right here on SportsGrid as well. Also, one bit of news in Major League Baseball, no signings in terms of free agents, but the Atlanta Braves have acted pretty quickly after their trade with Chris Sale, getting Chris Sale for the Boston Red Sox. They've extended him 2 years with the Red Sox. I believe the numbers are approximately $17 million a year. By the way, Boston paying some money already to Atlanta for him to take on that contract. And so Sale now going to be a longer-term member with the Braves after making that trade. They sent Vaughn Grissom over to Boston last week. All right, so that's the very latest that's going on in our headlines of sports. But the big headline, of course, from the weekend was the fact that Michigan came back to beat Alabama in overtime, and Washington needed every single point they could against Texas, who had the ball late in the game with a chance to win. So we'll get a preview of the game coming up. We'll also talk about some of the player props that are available. Not in every state, but in some states you can bet on college football player props. We'll talk about Michael Penix Jr. and potentially what he may look like in the championship game. And then also talk about some of the, you would say, non-competitive outcomes of the college football bowl system. Very specifically, the Orange Bowl has always been one of the best games on the bowl schedule. So Bill Bender from Sporting News joins us next. We'll talk about that when we return on NewsWire right after this quick break. Don't go away.
It looked like it was going in. It hit the upright and bounced out and did not go in. There's more scoring in an MLS soccer game than there is this Cotton Bowl. The Chargers didn't know what the hell to do with Staley for years. They're a clown show in chief. Denver's got this issue, Gabe. Like, the Chiefs must just be sitting there going, wow, what a bunch of brain trust we work with in this division.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm laying the 14.5.
And against the number as an underdog this year, meaning where they cover, they win outright. There's a very real chance that this Michigan season is the best chance they will have.
Oh, Rocky Top, Tennessee.
So, am I just a side better now? I'm right here on Saturday on College Football Today. It's bowl season, baby.
College Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
fun, especially if you know that maybe Kuzma could get moved. Tyus Jones is a free agent. To me, I'm taking Detroit with Kate, with Ivy, with Doran, and then obviously Ashore Thompson, and also because of Monty Williams, I know he's a better coach than that.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We've got the college football playoff championship coming up on Monday night, last of its kind. 12 teams next year, only 4 this year. The 2 that advanced, of course, Washington and Michigan. We're going to get a preview of that game, take a look at a player prop as well over on FanDuel. Bill Bender joins us. He's getting ready for the big game in Houston on Monday night. But before we move ahead, we got to take a look back. Bill, thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Great to see you. Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so let's get started here. The college football bowl season was epitomized, I thought, Bill, by the final day, by this January the 1st. Now, I was a bigger fan of having these games go to second, third, and fourth. I know that's gone. But the first was a perfect example of what this bowl season was. What it wasn't was it could have been. The first was horrible. Early in the day, horrible games. Oregon blowing out Liberty, Tennessee blowing out. Then we got to the championship games, the semifinal, and those games were extremely competitive because everybody was playing. And if you go back, Bill, and you look at that Orange Bowl game, it may have been the worst one of it all. People in South Florida are talking about this all the time. I mean, Florida State fans left at halftime in this one. The final was 65-3. And the Orange Bowl, generally speaking, in the past, Bill, when a championship was played, it was in South Florida, and it was in the Orange Bowl. And they're part of this rotating championship bowl system, but obviously some real discontent as to the outcome of that game. And the ratings spoke to it too. Nobody watching that game in the second half of the appearance.
Well, it encapsulates everything that's wrong with the bowl season right now, with the opt-outs and the transfer portal and the being left out of the playoff and the diminishing value of those New Year's Day 6 bowls that is so much different than it was in the BCS or pool eras. It's to the point where, did you ever think you would see a coach like Kirby Smart basically not apologize for winning by 60 points, but saying, we need to fix this? That stuck out with me. You might roll your eyes a little bit and say, well, they're 42-2 the last 3 years, but it certainly was an eyesore, whatever you want to call it, for this bowl season, and it's not going to get better for bowl games outside the 12-team playoff next year with the opt-outs, with the portal, until those things are fixed.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do, Bill, because every game now that the 12 is in, that's going to be fantastic. But you talk about irrelevance and those irrelevant bowl games on the 18th of December, and I mean, those games are going to be zeros now moving forward too. So I don't know what the answer is outside of paying the kids to actually play in the bowl game. I don't know what else they could do. Now the Crimson Tide, Bill, I got to tell you, I was watching that game. I thought they were going to beat Michigan once they were up like they were, but boy, a very rare Nick Saban team sort of fell flat. Odd play calling, I thought, at the end of the game. Some of it had to do with some mistakes that they made, very specifically the center, and he ends up leaving and going in the transfer portal. Milrose seems to me, Bill, like a good but not great quarterback, which is enough at Alabama usually. But given the nature of transfers and everything else, it's not a stacked deck for Alabama like it used to be.
No, it's not. And that was the most eye-catching thing for us in Big Ten country was in the past in these heavyweight fights between the Big Ten and the SEC, and you could argue the heavyweight fights this year between the Big Ten and the SEC. The SEC wins up front. Michigan pushed Alabama around in the first quarter. Alabama wasted a half of that game trying to figure out Michigan's pass rush. They had 5 first-half sacks. Now, I know Alabama made adjustments, had a fourth-quarter lead, but, Craig, I feel like had Michigan not had all these special teams meltdowns, a fumble, a missed field goal, a missed extra point, that they may have won that game in regulation by 10 points. So I think Michigan was the better team in this game. It's a really good Michigan team that we keep thinking this is when they're going to get them. It's like that movie with the villain. Nobody's got the villain yet. Maybe Washington can do it. But as we were talking before the break, I'm not seeing that one either.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at this game differently, actually. I think we're going to go head-to-head here because it's not, and let's throw up the odds here, and we'll begin with that. So Michigan's 4.5-point favorites over Washington. The total is 55.5. There was some 6.5 that I think it actually opened at like 3, went to 6. Now there's some pullback. It's back at 4.5. So I think for me, Bill, when I look at that, we're going to look at it differently. But when I look at this game, I think Michigan is going to win. There's going to be no time left, and they're going to kick a field goal. I mean, isn't Washington in every single game that they play? Like they have like some crazy historical one-score record going on. So it's not like I think that the Huskies are better, but I think Penix is going to drive the team down the field at some point to score, and with very little time left, Michigan somehow wins, just like they did against Alabama. That's the way I see the game going on. I know you see it differently, but for me, at least I'm leaning toward taking these points.
Well, I think Michigan will learn the lessons from last year. If they get into a game like they did against TCU, they could run into some trouble. If Washington, which has the Joe Moore Award winning offensive line, gives Michael Penix Jr. some time, Michigan will be in trouble. But I think Michigan's pass rush will get land in this game a little bit. You mentioned Washington, the 8 games of 8 points or less that they have won. It's beyond impressive that they've been in all these close games. I just look at Michigan, 3-0 against the spread against Penn State, Ohio State, and Alabama. And I picked against Michigan against Ohio State and Alabama. So I've learned my lesson that they're like the villain in the movie. They're wearing the black hat. Every time we think this is it, this is when we get them, this is when we get Jim Harbaugh, they just win again. And I think their running game will control this game with Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, and that will open things up for J.J. McCarthy, and they don't turn the ball over. So I'm going to go with Michigan to cover the spread, I think by a touchdown. So, yeah, it's good. We don't disagree too often, Craig. This is good.
No, we're going to be head-to-head. I mean, I just think either a backdoor score or a late score. I find Washington's offense to be unstoppable, but I also find their defense not be able to stop anybody. So I think that combination to me leads to maybe an over and a close game coming up on Monday, or at least maybe that's what I'm rooting for. Now, unquestionably, Michael Penix Jr. Has raised his stock tremendously off that game last week, and maybe regardless of what the outcome is against Michigan, he's put himself back in a high position to be drafted into the NFL. Although, of course, he's a little bit older than some of the other quarterbacks. He's like the Burrow age. His total passing yards is 297 over on FanDuel. Now, college props, we want to be clear, you can't bet on players everywhere in the country. It just depends on where you live. But this is available on FanDuel at 297. If according to you, Bill, I think Penix goes over in a loss, right? Like, doesn't that the way that it feels like he's got to do too much? But I don't know how you see it. How do you see this total?
No, it's exactly how I see it. This reminds me of 2021 when Ohio State and Michigan played, and Ohio State had a receiver room that featured Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Marvin Harrison was on the bench. So, and C.J. Stroud had over 300 yards passing in that game, but Michigan won 42-27. I kind of see this game playing out the same way. I think Michael Penix, is there a prop on attempts? I think he'll throw over 40 times. I think he'll clear that prop. The most passing yards Michigan's given up in a game this year was 271 against Ohio State and Kyle McCord with a bunch of really good receivers. So I feel safe in taking Penix in that prop with the understanding that, yeah, he's going to have to throw a lot to try to keep Washington in this game.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, let's catch up on your number one team in 2024, Bill, in college football.
I'm going to go Georgia. How boring is that? I'm working on a early top 25 for next week, and it's going to be littered with SEC teams, which the interesting thing is Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, maybe even Missouri could all be top 10 teams. They all got to play each other. It's going to be so interesting to see how many losses they can have and still get in the playoff, because I think the SEC and Big Ten will dominate the playoff next year. But, man, you look at some of those schedules, Alabama has a tough one in particular.
Yeah, no mention of the Gators there. It doesn't make me feel very good, but I know where we're at here. All right, well, Bill, have fun. Are you going to the game Monday or are you going to watch at home?
My flight is tomorrow. I'm headed to Houston.
All right, enjoy, and we look forward to catching up with you after the game next week. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much.
All right, we'll be right back. Don't go away.
It looked like it was going in. It hit the upright and bounced out and did not go in. There's more scoring in an MLS soccer game than there is this Cotton Bowl.
The Chargers didn't know what the hell to do with Staley for years. They're a clown show in chief. Denver's got this issue, Gabe. Like, the Chiefs must just be sitting there going, wow, what a bunch of brain trust we work with in this division.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm laying the 14.5. And against the number as an underdog this year, meaning when they cover, they win outright. There's a very real chance that this Michigan season is the best chance they will have.
Oh, Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Am I just a side better now? I'm right here on Saturday on College Football Today. It's bowl season, baby.
College Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Who are you taking? Well, especially if you know that maybe Kuzma could get moved. Tyus Jones is a free agent. To me, I'm taking Detroit with Cade, with Ivy, with Doran, and then obviously Ashore Thompson, and also because of Monty Williams, I know he's a better coach than that.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to have Matthew Waters back from Legal Sports Report. He was on the mend a couple of days ago and sounding and looking much better. He's getting ready for a big week for the Eagles coming up this Sunday. My goodness, what has happened to them against the Giants? Got to play a relevant game in Week 18. Didn't see that coming. But we'll dive into some topics over on Legal Sports Report. By the way, I encourage all of you to check out LegalSportsReport.com as a definite primary over this secondary appearance that all their guys make here on, of course, SportsGrid. Hey, Matthew, great to have you back here on NewsWire.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You always seem to bring the Eagles up when I'm feeling like really bad about them, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, Philly season starts in April. We feel good about them. Good team.
And the Sixers are doing great too. So, you know.
Sixers are doing well too. Eagles will be fine. Eagles will be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe not. All right, so let's dive into the apps in October is basically our focus, and what we're going to discuss, and I know that you spent some time on this at Legal Sports Report, is the numbers that have increased simply with people spending time and downloading sports betting apps in the fall. So what do those numbers look like? And I guess we shouldn't be surprised as to how many people are on them, but I wonder, again, how many people are actually betting as opposed to just downloading them. I would assume more than half, probably most, but for example, I can't bet on them, but I have the app.
Right. Yeah, well, we have a little bit of all of that in this story, and you said it, but I would encourage anyone interested in this to head on over to Legal Sports Report and read this story, because there's a whole lot of numbers in here that you can really dive into. But basically, in October, Americans spent 67.1 million minutes on sports betting apps. That is a new record. It's above February 2023 was the previous record. And look, we shouldn't be shocked that we're setting a new record, this late in the year, because it's not, we're also not talking about a same store comparison here, right? You didn't have Massachusetts in February. You didn't have Kentucky. Ohio is just getting off the ground. So those are some big states that have made a big impact on the sports betting world. But October was a huge month. A lot of places set record revenue, record handle, what have you. So it's not shocking to see this. But there's a lot of interesting little details in there from this report from GWS Magnify that's worth going out. First of all, DraftKings, since July, have been the leader in this category every month. Nearly 45% of all those 67.1 million minutes that was spent on DraftKings. And FanDuel was second, but maybe a further second than you would expect, at 20% of the minutes. I found that pretty surprising, especially because when you consider DraftKings does not have the watch and wager yet from Genius for the NFL games. So I figured that might play a little bit more into it, but no. DraftKings is still a heavy leader there. ESPN Bet, they took over BetMGM in November for the third most popular app. And ESPN Bet had the largest percentage of young people on its app, 44% of its users under the age of 36. I don't know what that says exactly. I know that my experience and my memory of ESPN is different from what ESPN is these days, right? I remember waking up and watching the same version of SportsCenter from midnight with Stuart Scott for the next 5 hours. But obviously ESPN ESPN brand still has a hold on this younger demographic. And the 21 to 28 demographic, the youngest demographic that they track, now they've grown the most, 36% up in their app usage, but they're spending so little. Most of that group say they spend $5 a week on betting. So I felt that was pretty interesting too. Obviously, we know the older people they have more expendable income for this type of entertainment budget, is what it should be considered. Most people in the app were the 37 to 44 age group, 1.6 million of 7.9 million active app users. So that's not too bad. That 21 to 28, that accounted to 1.2 million of the nearly 8 million. So I think we're going to be watching this closely, because we have We don't have any more huge states coming online anytime soon. You mentioned Vermont, of course, but really now we're looking at more of what are these apps doing to keep people on them. I mentioned the watch and wager type product from Genius, which will eventually let you be streaming an NFL game and betting from the same screen, looking at all kinds of different stats and what have you, all from one screen. A lot of people, around the talk of when PASPA fell in May 2018, a lot of people approached this as, well, it's going to be a two-screen experience, right? This is going to be people betting on their phone, watching on their TV. It's going to take two screens. And going into 2024, it's starting to look like that may not be the case. Now, you're always going to have people who are betting multiple games and, watching multiple things. But for the average bettor who's maybe just getting down once or twice on a game, watching it in the app may get them betting even more. So operators are definitely, they're out of this customer acquisition phase now. They're in customer retention phase, and it's really all about that stickiness. How can they keep you on their app? How can they control and keep their share of your wallet? And we're seeing that through new parlays and how deep those products can get. We're seeing it through, like I said, the innovations behind the streaming in it. So there's a lot of things coming up that are going to change just how much people are on sports betting apps. So I don't think it'll take very long for the 67.1 million minutes to be eclipsed.
Now, I think that part of all of the conversations that we have as far as this is concerned all kind of goes back to the same conversation, which is so many more people betting, so many more people downloading, and simply looking at odds. And what that leads to is people in the space that have never been there before. And so obviously integrity is something that comes up in a lot of conversations, Matthew, that we've had here. And I think it's a direct result of just more people being able to bet and to access betting. Now, very specifically, there is a new probe, and new to us here because we haven't talked about it here on the show, that is surrounding a boxing match. Interestingly enough, it's one of the fights that was on a Jake Paul undercard, but I think I'm not all that familiar with it other than I know it was in Florida back in December. So is there anything to this that they're looking at? Will something come out of this or still too early to tell?
Yeah, it's too early to tell right now, but you're right. It was on an undercard for Jake Paul. Let's be super clear because Jake Paul is involved in the Better Sports Betting app. He is not implicated in this from what we know. So let's just get that out there straight ahead. But, when you talk about combat sports, Craig, and sports in general, where one person can affect the outcome, I think of tennis as well. We get a lot of irregularities betting in tennis. Whenever there's one person that can do it, you always kind of have to keep a closer eye on things. And this was interesting because now boxing is not my primary sport, but I've looked into this. And essentially, this Yoenis Tellez gentleman, it shouldn't have taken 10 rounds for him to knock out Levan Navarro. The line was the 5th round, that it wouldn't go beyond that. And multiple six-figure wagers came in saying that it would go beyond that. And it looks like, now this is coming from the Sports Daily, they had the story. We've since confirmed it with U.S. Integrity that there are investigations ongoing. But it seems to be that one of those six-figure wagers could have been from one of the corner teams of the fighters involved. And so that is obviously something that needs to be looked at. The UFC went through something like this earlier. MMA coach James Krause, he's serving an indefinite suspension right now for suspicious betting activity. And the UFC changed their rules and said, look, fighters cannot bet on any UFC bouts anymore. That led to some regulators briefly banning it and waiting for everything to kind of, for the dust to settle before bringing it back. So I think, unfortunately, these kind of situations are more likely to happen in the combat sports world. And I don't think anybody is necessarily shocked to hear that it could be coming from the combat sports world. Boxing for decades has always been a little bit of a show, So, we're still looking into this. We're still waiting on details.
All right. Finally, let's end with some news here on Penn gaming. Obviously associated with trying to figure out ways to enhance their sports betting blueprint and footprint. And this has been going on now for a year. Some success, some failure. What's the latest with Penn?
Yeah, so Penn right now is they're in danger of being distracted from the bigger picture. One of their shareholders, it's an institutional investor named H.G. Vora, and they have about a 19% ownership in the stock. And basically they're saying, look, the stock is not where it should be. We want to put people on the Penn Entertainment board to help dictate what this company can do. And so we're looking at a potential proxy battle. And a proxy battle basically is just coming out and saying, whose side are you on? Are you on management's side, or are you on the side of this company that wants to do something? And proxy battles can take a while, and they can sap a lot of energy from the C-suite management. So we're going to keep an eye on that too.
All right, Matt. Well, have a great rest of your week. We'll catch up next week. And thanks again for coming on NewsWire, as always, twice this week. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report. Coming up next, Sal Capaccio talks Buffalo Bills football. Huge game.
It looked like it was going in. It hit the upright and bounced out and did not go in. There's more scoring in an MLS soccer game than there is this Cotton Bowl.
The Chargers didn't know what the hell to do with Staley for years. They're a clown show in chief. Denver's got this issue, Gabe. Like, the Chiefs must just be sitting there going, wow, what a bunch of brain trust we work with in this division.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm right in the 14.5. And against the number as an underdog this year, meaning when they cover, they went out by. There's a very real chance that this Michigan season is the best chance they will have.
Oh, Rocky Top, Tennessee.
So, am I just a side better now? I'm right here on Saturday on College Football Today. It's bowl season, baby.
College Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Who are you taking? Well, especially if you know that maybe Kuzma could get moved. Tyus Jones is a free agent. To me, I'm taking Detroit with Cade, with Ivy, with Doran, and then obviously Ashore Thompson, and also because of Monty Williams, I know he's a better coach than that.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. So week 18 of the NFL in general is pretty complicated. But the good news, the way that the NFL sort of set it up, is that we're going to take care of some of the Saturday business early by placing 2 games on Saturday. And so by the time it gets to Sunday, you've created more win and you're in situations. Because obviously if all the games were on Sunday, as they kind of have been, by the way, in years past, what they would do is set it up so that the early games were win and wait to see what happens in the late games. But now we get some more clarity going in. So kind of like that the fact that this is where we're at. So many scenarios still very much up in the air. And of course, that includes the AFC East winner, the NFC East winner, and still playoff spots on the line at the bottom of the AFC and the bottom of the NFC as well. So here to do all the math for us is our friend from the early line, Ben Stevens. He's got Week 18's NFL playoff clinching scenarios. You may want to grab a pen.
Craig, it is the final week of the National Football League regular season in 2023. Week 18, where across the NFL, there are so many playoff clinching scenarios to know. In certain spots, Craig, it's trying to improve your seed line. In other spots, it's trying to win a divisional championship. And some just trying to earn a bid to the postseason. Craig, some have many different scenarios. If X team wins and these 3 teams lose, that's how X team gets into the postseason. In other spots, it's fairly simple. We look at a few of those today. We start, as it looks right now, with an NFC North rivalry in Lambeau Field. Green Bay, Wisconsin on Sunday afternoon. A 3-point spread in favor of the Packers against the Chicago Bears. Greg, for the second consecutive season, Green Bay will have a home game in its regular season finale against an NFC North divisional foe where all the Pack needs is to win and they earn a playoff berth. Of course, last year it was the Lions eliminating the Packers in Aaron Rodgers' final game in Green Bay. This year, the Packers booked as a 3-point favorite against the Chicago Bears, who have won 5 of their last 7 games, trying to get to 8 wins this year. Chicago riding high, Craig, clinching that number 1 overall pick for the 2024 NFL Draft, courtesy of the Carolina Panthers. The Packers have not been a good favorite this season, trying just to win outright, Craig, minus 164, virtually Green Bay's make playoff price at this moment. Over under 44.5, by the way. Green Bay has gone over in a bunch of games as of late. Chicago enters going over in their last 2 after going under in 5 of 6 previous games. Next up, Craig, it's a divisional title at stake in Tennessee on Sunday. It's the Titans and the Jaguars. If Jacksonville wins outright, they claim the AFC South for a second consecutive year, but it's been anything but easy. When Jacksonville was 8-3, Craig, they were a minus 1,000 favorite to win the division. Now you can look at that minus 225 price as Jacksonville ended that 4-game skid last week with C.J. Beathard. The status of Trevor Lawrence is uncertain, a limited participant at practice so far this week, but a 5.5-point spread in favor of Jacksonville. The over-under 39.5. Craig, in all 9 wins for the Jaguars this year, they have covered the number in all 9 victories. Needing to do that just one more time to earn a divisional crown in the AFC South and get into the AFC playoffs. So, Craig, some of the clinching scenarios that we have for week number 18, we'll roll through a few more as the week keeps going.
All right, thanks very much, Ben. And of course, coming up this week, we've got a lot of probably crazy finishes in the National Football League, so we will discuss that as well. Also, one quick note, I was making fun of the baseball hot stove. Maybe I shouldn't have, because we actually got a signing today. Looks like the New York Mets, according to the New York Post, have agreed to a 1-year deal with Harrison Bader for about, looks like $10.5 million. So Bader now plays outfield for the Mets this season. Now, remember, he played for the Yankees too, St. Louis Cardinals, so fully on board there. And in case you missed it earlier in the show, by the way, just wanted to mention this this college football bowl season stuff. I think we're in for a change here because the executive director of the college football bowl system essentially said that it is time to take a deeper look as to how this performs. Nick Carparelli, the executive director from the bowl season, says that the problem is not bowl games or the bowl system. It's unregulated circumstances surrounding NILs. And this was the first time we've seen a quote from somebody actually saying that this is the case. So something we'll keep an eye on. Again, we got a year to get it figured out, but naturally that will be coming up soon. But coming up faster than that is the game between Buffalo and Miami coming up on Sunday night. Miami gets a prime time game, a rare one, at home, especially to close out the season, and playing against one of their nemesis teams in the Buffalo Bills, who've been red hot. Sal Capaccio joins us now as we talk about that game. He does the sideline reporting for the Bills radio network. Hey, Sal, thanks for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And sorry, I was a little bit late here. I had a couple issues here that I was dealing with on my end, but I appreciate you having me on.
No, thanks for coming on, Sal. Well, the line came out earlier this week, and I know that there's not a lot that you can allude to as far as that covering the NFL. But I thought it was interesting that the Bills are favored in this game going into Miami, and I guess it speaks to just all the success that they've had against the Dolphins. These games have been relatively close through the years, coming down to final possessions and fumbles and some wacky endings too. The Dolphins are just not playing their best football, I guess, right now, and the Bills are. But, all bets are off, as they would say, going into Sunday night. I could see a number of different scenarios playing out with this game.
Yeah, listen, I mean, this is a rivalry game, right? I mean, you go back, I grew up here in Buffalo, and now I cover the team professionally, of course, but you go back to the 1970s, the Dolphins beat the Bills 20 straight times. It was such a big deal for Bills fans. The first time the Bills won in the opening game of 1980 in the regular season, the goalposts came down at the stadium because fans were so excited to beat the Dolphins. Then you get into the 80s and you get Marino against Kelly and Shula against Levy, and the Bills and Dolphins rivalry really heats up, and they're vying for AFC East and conference championships, and the Bills go to Super Bowls. And then we have Brian Cox, who's a member of the Dolphins, giving basically flipping the bird to the Bills fans on the way out, getting ejected in games. This goes back a long way. So throw the records out, as they like to say. I don't mean to be cliche, but you're right. Look, I mean, the Bills, they are in a win streak. They haven't played their cleanest football the last 2 weeks. And I think that's what is a little concerning, especially on offense for a lot of fans. And you're going against a Miami Dolphins team that, although they are very depleted right now with some injuries, they, of course, have a lot of firepower. And it is in South Florida, of course.
Yeah, and once upon a time, I mean, this is not all that long ago, Sal, but to see Thurman sign with the Dolphins was shocking. Back at the time when he did do that, I couldn't believe. I was covering the Dolphins more closely at that time too. So this is a story that came out of WKBW in your area, Sal, and I got to tell you, now I live in South Florida, okay, but I'm impartial to anything in the NFL. I don't know if you agree with this. I can't believe that this is going to be true. Just my opinion here. And this is taking no side here in the matter because I understand Bills Mafia and how well they travel. But apparently using some fan forecast over on Vivid Seats that Dolphins fans will only have a 52% to 48% advantage in that stadium over the Buffalo Bills. Now, Sal, I've covered the Dolphins. I've been around South Florida for a long time. The fans are very fickle. When they're winning, they're in, and when they're losing, you can't find them showing up. I get it. But this is a big event town. I don't believe that this will be the case. I think a lot of Bills fans will go, Sal. I do, at 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is. But I cannot imagine that anybody who's ever liked football in South Florida is not going to be at this game Sunday night. But that's just me.
So, first of all, it's actually the other way around. They're saying they're projecting 52% Bills fans over Dolphins fans, not even having – but that's the algorithms that Vivid Seats uses. I agree with you. That's hard to imagine. But I will tell you from my experience, I've been down there for the last 10 years as part of the Bills radio network and on the sidelines. And Bills fans a lot of times have kind of taken over the stadium. Now, I don't know if it'd be more than 50%, but I agree with you, Craig, that it's – and I apologize. I know it's going to sound bad. It's kind of a front-running city when it comes to a lot of there's a lot going on. It's not Buffalo where you have the Miami Heat and all these different galas going on all the time, right? Buffalo, we have the Bills and the Sabres and, we have some college basketball and football. But, you get the point. You said it, right? There's a big event town in Miami. And when the team wasn't that great, you're going to get those seats. That said, I want to invite everybody to go to my social media feed at Sal Sports on Twitter and look at some of the pictures people are sending us this morning. From the airports, from Buffalo Airport, from Miami, Fort Lauderdale Airport. It's insane. Bills fans are traveling to this game. I don't know what the exact percentage is going to be, but it will be a lot. The other part of this is, look, I mean, if Miami Dolphins fans want to make some money, the average ticket, I guess, is going for over $300 in this game. The average ticket. So I do think that there's probably some Dolphins fans dumping to say, hey, I can make a little money. I got season tickets here a little after Christmas because Bills fans are going there and they're willing to spend.
Yeah, and listen, I'm very well aware, Sal. I live only about 15, 20 minutes east of the stadium in Hollywood, and a lot of the Bills fans stay in Hollywood when they come down and stay on Hollywood Beach. I've seen it many times, and I I would probably go back the last 10, 20 years, Sal, and agree with you. There's probably been more Bills fans and Dolphins fans at all these games. But this one, I don't know. This is just a different animal to me coming up on Sunday. That's just my view on it. Speaking of which, the Bills are getting a new stadium, which is much needed in 2026, I believe. What is sort of the progress there?
So it's right across the street from the current stadium, Highmark Stadium. It is scheduled to open in 2026. It's on schedule. It is, you drive by every week and you see something different. You see a little bit more done. There's still not steel sticking up out of the ground yet, right? That's going to be the next kind of thing to see. But at the same time, you see the bowl, you see the hole in the ground, you see the, garters on the outside of that bowl, I guess you'd say. However, I don't know construction terms. But it's going to be a state-of-the-art open-air stadium. Now, I get it. People say, why don't the Bills build a dome? You live in Buffalo. Well, a couple things. They like playing outdoors in Buffalo, and it's Buffalo. And you teams are almost mentally defeated sometimes coming to Buffalo before they even get off the plane. They have to come here.
Right.
But the biggest reason, obviously, Craig, to be honest with you, is money. I mean, it would have been another $500 million to put a dome on this stadium. And the Bills and Buffalo and the organization actually got a lot of state money, taxpayer dollars, and that's a negotiation. And that would have been something that, So it would have been a really much bigger deal. That said, there was also a study done with the season ticket holders who said basically, we don't mind being cold, we hate being wet. So you're going to get what you get, kind of like in Miami with the canopy covering a lot of the seats. Right. So you're going to get you're going to be dry in pretty much almost any seat. I think like 30% of the seats won't be dry because it'll be all the way down in the bottom there and you won't be covered by that. So that's the thinking of it. Otherwise, it's going to be a beautiful state of the art facility. It's even going to be the current stadium. I don't know if people know this. You might know this. When you walk in, you go down a long way. So you're actually playing pretty far down, from ground level, and the upper deck is what you see. This stadium. So when the wind comes, it goes down. It swirls. It's the swirling wind. This stadium will be out. It will be up, actually, like most of these stadiums are, but they will have what's called wind confusion. It's a new technology surrounding the stadium for this mesh. When the wind hits it, it gets into the stadium, it gets down, and it's actually going to dissipate before it gets down to the field to be as crazy as it's been at this stadium.
Okay. Looking forward to going. Buffalo, the old Rich Stadium, of course. Okay, Sal, we got a minute to go here. Certainly you're picking the Bills to win. I would never imagine to go any other way on this. But tell me what's going on with Stephon Diggs. He's been a Dolphin crusher through the years. Do you think that shows back up, or is Joe Brady's just offense operating differently now?
It is operating a little bit differently. It's a good question. We've been asking ourselves the same thing here. His production's down, his usage is down, but at the end of the day, he is their number one receiver, and he will have a depleted secondary he's going against, but I don't know if he can get away from Jalen Ramsey for those big numbers, so we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, Sal, thank you so much for spending some time. Enjoy the game coming up on Sunday night. I certainly will be watching. I'm sure it'll be the highest-rated game of the year. Thanks again for coming on.
You got it. Thanks for asking.
All right. We'll be right back.
It looked like it was going in. It hit the upright and bounced out and did not go in. There's more scoring in an MLS soccer game than there is this Cotton Bowl. The Chargers didn't know what the hell to do with Staley for years. They're a clown show in Chief. Denver's got this issue, Gabe. Like, the Chiefs must just be sitting there going, wow, what a bunch of brain trust we work with in this division.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
favorite. I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm laying the 14.5. And against the number as an underdog this year, meaning when they cover, they went out by. There's a very real chance that this Michigan season is the best chance they will have.
Oh, Rocky Top. Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Coach, am I just a side better now?
I'm right here on Saturday on College Football Today. It's bowl season, baby.
College football today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Who are you taking? Well, especially if you know that maybe Kuzma could get moved. Tyus Jones is a free agent. To me, I'm taking Detroit with Cade, with Ivy, with Doran, and then obviously Ashore Thompson, and also because of Monty Williams, I know he's a better coach than that.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony.
I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is a funny story, but again, if you watch Different Strokes in the 80s, you know this next line. If not, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. But anyway, there was a line from that show. Gary Coleman would say, "What'd you talk about, Willis?" But nobody streaming knows what I'm talking about here. Anyway, kid's name is Willis. The reason why I bring this up, 13 years old, folks, named Willis, ends up the new Tetris champion. I know this has nothing to do with sports, but sports and gaming kind of go hand in hand. And we all played Tetris at some point. In fact, during the holidays, my wife got like this new handheld just Tetris game. It's like comes in like looks like the Game Boy, but it's just Tetris. I played it for like 10 seconds and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I remembered, oh my gosh, like once you start that game, you're literally committed for like minutes and hours. But anyway, this kid ended up breaking Tetris on the old Nintendo system. And now he's the all-time scoring leader. Here we are 30 years later after Tetris came out. So congratulations to him. Little known fact here, I definitely was very much into video games like in the 80s and 90s. Not so much after that. I have 3 actual arcade systems in my house. Not the ones that you guys know of, like the 3 like video game big size systems. I have Galaga, I have Pac-Man, and I have Frogger. Those are all games from the 80s, although my wife wishes we only had none of them. So I don't know. If anyone wants to come by and pick one up, I think eventually I'm going to have to give them away. I don't know why I brought that up, but anyway, that's a story for another day. That will do it for our show today. Thanks again to Sal Capaccio for coming on, Buffalo Bills sideline reporter. You can hear him on the Bills Radio Network coming up on Sunday night. Also, thanks to Ben for participating and giving us the video today on some of the look at Week 18 in the NFL. Bill Bender from Sporting News, Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report. As always, our producer of the show is Sam Yarnell. I'm Craig Mish. Coming up next, we've got the early line, followed by Pharrell, Coast to Coast. And then, of course, we're right back here with Warren Sharp on the program tomorrow with our final look of the regular season in the National Football League. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I hope you have a great rest of your day.